Hey everybody, this is Bob Farrell today on Songplanet. Hey everybody, Bob Farrell on Songplanet today. I got one of my musical heroes today, and I can't believe we're sitting in here doing this really. But I want everybody to meet Michael Omartian. My
Hi,
friend.
Bob. Thanks for having me, brother.
Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Michael and I sometimes get to do lunch together now with all the old guys,
Yep.
the OCC
Exactly, yeah.
because we're all the old guys now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? I got your bio the other day from Susie, and I found myself, I was laughing out loud because of I was stupefied, Michael, at all the work and all the accomplishment over so many decades. And I'm going to read a second because it's so unbelievable interesting. Michael Omartian has contributed his talents to over 350 million albums and CDs sold worldwide as a producer, composer, arranger, artist, or musician. First record producer to chart #1 hits in 3 consecutive decades.
Yeah.
That's no mean feat. With 17 Grammy nominations, including Producer of the Year, Album of the Year, and Gospel Album of the Year, Omartian is a multiple Grammy Award winner. Additionally, he's been recognized by NARAS as Keyboard Musician of the Year. As an arranger and musician, Michael's worked with artists that include Steely Dan, Barbra Streisand, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, John Lennon, Boss Skaggs, Jerry Garcia, Logan the Messina, Ricky Lee Jones, Alison Krauss, Al Jarreau, Faith Hill, Dolly Parton. See why I started laughing? I mean, it's just the A-list goes on and on. Manhattan Transfer, Tim McGraw, Diana Ross, Michael McDonald, Shania Twain, Julio Iglesias, Leanne Rimes, Quincy Jones, Keith Urban, George Strait, Lone Star, Leanne Womack, Johnny Cash, and his producer. Don't start throwing anything at me yet. As producer, some of Omartian's credits include Rod Stewart, Christopher Cross, Roberta Flack, Peter Cetera, Reba McEntire, Michael Bolton, Vince Gill, Willie Nelson, Whitney Houston, Amy Grant, Donna Summer, the Imperials, Jermaine Jackson, Bella Fleck, Janice Ian, Stephen Bishop, the Jacksons, Waylon Jennings, Trisha Yearwood, Michael Crawford from Broadway, the Dirt Band, Patti Loveless, Cher, and Cliff Richard. I mean, dude, two musicals composed, Child of the Promise and Ordinary Girl. The original cast album, did you produce that for Civil War and wrote the music, right?
Well, I didn't. The Civil War.
Yeah.
I played on it and produced a couple of artists for specific.
But you composed the song Atlanta Real for this '96 Summer Olympics.
The Olympics, yeah.
So, you know what? It's just kind of bowled me over and stunned me when
I've been blessed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. You were raised in Evanston.
Yeah, Illinois.
Right. You were born in Evanston?
Yes, sir.
And raised there. That's Chicago. Yeah. That's a little suburb of Chicago.
That's just north of Chicago.
If I remember right, first time we visited at the old guys' lunch one day, we were just chatting, talking. I wanted to know how you came to the Lord. And you talked about your Armenian. So are you like first or second generation Armenian immigrant?
Well, my grandparents were the first generation here. Yeah. So, and my grandmother was part of, in 1915, the Turks came in and they slaughtered almost 2 million Armenians.
Yeah, I've read about it.
And my grandmother had her daughter beheaded in front of her, and her husband was taken away. She never saw him again, so God only knows what happened to him. And so, but she was a praying, strong woman of prayer. And of course, the Armenians was the first theocracy. Back in 300 AD was Armenia.
Really?
So the Turkish Muslims came in to take Christianity away from Armenia. So she ended up on a boat.
Where's Armenia?
Armenia, Turkey, where Turkey is, it's just to the east of Turkey.
Okay.
A little north. It's actually Euro-Asian.
So they were
able Middle Eastern.
to get away from the pogrom or the slaughterhouse and get over to America?
Well, what happened was in 1915, that was World War I.
World War I.
Yeah. So part of that Europe was aware of what was going on and they stopped it. But 2 million people had died already. But
Just 2 million?
Yeah, but she grazed on field grass with those who were left for 2 months until they rounded them up and put them on a ship and brought them to Ellis Island. And from what I understood,
So Grandma and Grandpa came off Ellis
yeah, but I
Island.
found this out just in the last year because I did an interview about this. I found out that I had some relatives that were already here, so that when she came, my grandpa,
They had to kind of
she
have
came by
somebody,
herself
didn't they?
because my grandfather was disappeared.
Who
So
was here?
An aunt or an uncle was here.
In New York?
Or a relative of them were already there because they were greeted by a couple of people that they knew.
So NYC. They were in New York.
New York, yeah.
So when did they decide to hop over to Chicago?
From what I found out, they went to Wisconsin for a little while, and then I think probably, I want to say about 1940 is probably when they went to Chicago area.
So
And I was born in 45.
So your mom and dad came over. I mean,
My
they
mom and
came
dad,
over
my
from
mom and
Chicago
dad
in
were
the early
born.
40s and you were born.
Well, my mom and dad were born in the United States, but they were probably born in Wisconsin.
Gotcha.
So
Michael, he finds himself in Evanston,
Yeah.
growing up. Was it a good upbringing? Was
yeah, it was good. I mean,
America kind of upbringing?
very much so. I mean, you know,
Tree-lined streets?
Well, yeah, coming from a city like Chicago or New York, you have neighborhoods, which we don't really have anymore.
Right,
Everything's
right.
become so. But there were Armenian neighborhoods, Italian, Polish neighborhoods and stuff, and the neighborhood that I was in.
Paul Simon had the same experience in New York. I just read about it in his book.
Exactly.
That autobiography.
So I was around my aunts and uncles. We all happened to live
Big family.
blocks away from each other.
All family.
Yeah.
And mostly Armenian.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I was reading, at 4, you began playing piano.
Yeah.
At 4. At 5, drums.
Yeah.
By the time you were 10, Mike was studying percussion, composition, and theory.
Yeah.
That's not every kid's MO.
Yeah.
So tell me about, did you know really quickly on this is going to be a big part of my life?
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't like today where you have a support mechanism where you're not by yourself. There's other people that are kind of coming through this kind of an experience.
Yeah.
It was pretty isolated.
Right.
I found out
But you had a piano in the house.
No, we didn't have a piano in the house. I had
So
a
how'd you
piano
pull
in
that
my
off?
aunt's house. And my aunt's house was a few blocks away, so I'd walk to her house. And I'd sit and start plunking away.
4-year-old Michael goes walking down the aunt.
My aunt had a piano. She played a little bit. She played hymns, old hymns and stuff like that. And I would sit and I would just watch what was she doing. And I was able to go, I don't even know how this happened, but she said that I was able to go and just pick out the melody. It was just there.
I know how
it was
that-
just there. And so I kind of got into it, but with no support. I mean, my parents, because I was doing this over at my aunt's house, they really weren't that aware of how fast I was progressing. But my aunt told my mom, "You need to do something about this." So I got
hot boy here.
Yeah, so I needed to. So I started getting lessons. My dad loved the accordion, so I was taking accordion lessons. I was taking piano lessons. And then I became very interested. My mom said all I did was I was banging on stuff all the time with sticks.
Got you a set of drums.
Yeah, so we got some drums, but they thought this was cute. This was not serious. This was cute.
Right.
And I think Armenians come from kind of the same thing as Jews do, which is like because of the persecution, you need to have a vocation that reflects well.
Absolutely.
And so you need to be either a doctor or
That's all fluff.
Yeah.
Make sure you're a civil engineer.
Make sure that you're giving the name, your family name. So musician wasn't part of that at all.
Wasn't from my generation, my dad either.
No, I mean, I think that was the way it was.
It's just the way it was.
People didn't understand. I mean, my mom's opinion would be, well, you'd end up in a club, with drugs and all that. That's all you.
Or teaching some not good nosed kid in the back room of a music store. That's what my dad's analogy was.
Exactly.
So you kind of it was going on. It was a sideline, but it wasn't like, oh, Michael will get over this. I mean,
that's what they thought. They said this is a passing fancy.
Yeah, this is just passing.
Interestingly enough, they would drag me out whenever they had people over and have me perform because it was fun.
Yeah.
But it was never taken seriously, and when it was taken seriously, it was when I was in 1967 when I said I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Los Angeles. And they
Okay,
said,
I want to get to that, but I'm not quite there. But I just
that's
want to
okay.
make sure that you started studying composition and theory where, before
privately. All
Okay,
privately.
all right, all private.
And then in
at
high
16,
school.
you began composing and arranging
For orchestra.
while playing for orchestras in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, the high school orchestra, which was 220 people. I went to
Wow,
a
that's
very
big
large
one.
high school.
That's a pretty big one.
And
So,
yeah.
And playing in clubs, playing in the nightclubs, and a couple of summer seasons as a percussionist with the Chicago Symphony. That's pretty
It was a
cool.
summer program. It was a competition in Illinois.
Yeah.
And whoever won, they had this summer program 2 years in a row. So I was the kid that got the gig in
You
the
were the
percussion
guy.
section. Yeah.
Okay, so somewhere in all that time, you're just building your kind of prowess, and then all of a sudden you just announce at age what? I'm leaving for L.A. You're 60 in 1967.
Well, I had graduated from high school, tried a little bit of college, got very bored very quickly because I would get involved in the music programs. I'm going, everybody's moving so slow. I couldn't.
You couldn't be with that.
I couldn't. It sounds terrible for me to say that, but I went. I feel like my feet are in concrete. I just can't.
Yeah.
And what went along with that is Chicago had nothing. There was no recording in it. There was nothing.
No industry.
But I would buy a record album and I'd look at it and go, oh, recorded in L.A., recorded in New York, recorded in Liverpool,
Everywhere.
Nashville. And I went, well, this is kind of what I want to do. I want to be part of whatever this is because I was a big jazzer when I first started. But then when the Beatles came, that was it for me.
Me too.
So I wanted to
Derailment.
I wanted to be part. Yeah, I wanted to be part of this.
Yeah.
And so I knew that there was only one way.
So
to
that
do
was
it.
in '67 that you
Yes,
said, "Mom and Dad, I'm
yeah,
out of here." Okay,
yeah.
and you were how old?
Yeah, I got to be out of here.
Were you 20?
I was about to, I was 20 and
Okay.
65.
So you boogie to L.A.
Yeah.
And literally, Michael, the sky opened up for you.
Not right away.
Not right away. But you were doing some work with Campus Crusade,
Yeah,
weren't you?
yeah.
Because you met Greg Nelson, my
Yeah,
buddy Greg,
yeah,
during
yeah,
that
Greg,
time.
that's right.
Because Greg has told
He
me
was on
that.
the New Folk, but he was on the one that went. There was a East and West.
He played bass in a group.
And he played bass. Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah,
funny right there.
yeah,
That's an
yeah,
image I had never
yeah.
thought of. So what were you doing with Campus?
I was. They wanted me there to do music stuff, and so I kind of got involved with the music program. I mean, it was great. I mean, it was.
Yeah, that's what.
It wasn't. It wasn't. And I hate to say it wasn't challenging, but it was great because
was
it had
fun.
another component to it, which is
and
the
plus,
spiritual component was great.
You were moving up toward what was about to happen with Jesus movement,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
when it really exploded.
Oh, yeah.
But I want you just to walk us, if you would, just some background about specifically the faith and when you felt like you came to the Lord. That was in Chicago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was. We went to an Orthodox Armenian church, which was kind of a. Everybody spoke Armenian, and I'm sitting there going, "What are we doing here?" And then a youth pastor came who wasn't Armenian, and he was on fire for Jesus. And so us little kids were getting the gospel, and it was very exciting. And I had a first cousin, Chuck, who ended up actually becoming a pastor. And Chuck was the one that led me to the Lord. He was 1 year older than I was.
How old were you think?
I was 20.
20. So right before you went to
1965.
LA.
1965, I came to know Jesus.
Tell me about that experience when you got in the closet.
Oh my gosh! Well, let me first say this: that my grandmother was a praying woman, and it was Christmas Day, 1965, and we were at our house for dinner, and my grandmother was downstairs. I was upstairs coming to the Lord, and my mom said she jumped off the couch and she said, "Hallelujah!" And my mom went, "What?"
Hallelujah! What?
She said, "My grandson just came to the Lord." That's how tapped in she was to the Spirit. Through prayer. I remember going over to Grandma's cook. She was a great cook, and I'd go walk over to her house, come over for lunch, and she'd just grab her Bible and start singing and stuff. I mean, it was an amazing thing to watch because you weren't looking at TV and seeing a bunch of TV evangelists or preachers. You were seeing someone who went through hell personally, and it was an incredible influence to watch.
Yeah.
This woman who went through would have every reason to go, "God, what did you do to me? And I don't want to have anything to do with it."
So you get to L.A. and you've got this kind of loose plan in your head, but tell us how that unfolded.
Well, the first of all, I had to sacrifice something, and that was when I was 18. I'm at my aunt's house and I'm playing piano, and the doorbell rings, and my aunt goes to the door and she says, "Michael, there's someone here to see you." Well, okay. And it was the neighbor across the street, Janet Aiken, and she was a African American woman who came over, and I'd never met her. And she said, "Son," she said, I was over praying, and she said, "God said, you go across the street. There's a young man who needs to know that he has to lay something down for 2 years."
Wow.
She says, "I don't even know what that is, son." She said, but she came over and said, "You need to lay something down." And I knew it was music.
Golly.
So between the ages of 18 and 20, I didn't play, I didn't listen to music, I didn't do anything. Because it was a sacrifice that I had to make. And so it was...
Did she tell you that?
She did. She said, "You need to make a sacrifice." And it was really a test. And you know who I had as an example? My grandma. I watched her, so I went, it's painful, but I watched what my grandmother went through, and even as a young man, you would think that this would be tough. This is one of the hardest things. When I talk to young people and I get into that, they just they glaze over like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?"
Right.
And I go, "You know what? You don't know the possibilities of what's out there for you if you don't follow what Christ calls you to do."
That's so true, buddy.
You're gonna be knocking your head.
It's always going to be adversarial. It's always a bit of it's going to be struggle and failure and sacrifice and commitment.
And there are failures that go along with it, but it's a point of obedience that sets everything in motion.
So you kind of laid it down for 2 years.
Oh, I did.
You laid it down.
Oh, I did.
And then you came back and you said, "I'm moving to LA."
Well, that's when I went to LA.
See us. You got to LA.
And I was full of faith. My mom and dad didn't understand what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I had $3,000 in my pocket, and I knew no one. I really didn't. And I ended up at Jack Hayford's church.
I was going to say, you know where the first time I saw you?
Yeah. Jack
Well,
Hayford.
it was Jack's.
Yeah.
I was at church on the way on a Sunday morning.
And it was a little...
Everybody turn around and hug your neighbor.
Yeah,
And, and you turn around and there's me. And I just... I almost said, "Do you know who you are?" Because I knew who you were.
No.
And, because I'd already been following your playing and your writing and your career, and it was fantastic what I was seeing. The first time I got Second Chapter album.
Oh, man.
Wow,
what a group. What a
I was
group.
in my little music room in Houston, and I'm flipping. As soon as I hear the stuff coming out of those speakers, I flip that over and start reading for names, and I see your name right there. And so walk me... Okay, I want you to walk us through a little bit of the LA success and how it came about, but tell me about meeting, did you meet Buck and Annie first?
Very, very soon because of Jack Hayford.
Because of Hayford.
Yeah.
And they were going to Hayford's church.
Yeah.
So Church on the Way.
Yep.
Which was a Foursquare church.
Foursquare church, and it was a small little 200 people.
Right.
It was on Sherman Way. It was in a little chapel.
Right.
We were there at the beginning. That's where I met Stormy.
God.
I met her before, but she ended up at church.
And Buck and Annie were going to the church?
Yep.
So did Buck tell you that we got stuff going on,
Yeah. Yeah. He had me come over to the studio one night. "I want you to hear Annie sing." And she was in the studio. They were working on something. I don't exactly remember what it was, but when I heard her voice, I went, "Holy cow, what is this?" And then Matt, I went going, "What?" And he said, "I'd like for you to do some of the arrangements for our albums." I said, "Yes, let's do it." It was interesting as I was at ABC Dunhill as a staff producer
you were
at the
ABC
time.
Dunhill at the time.
And Steve Berry, who was the head of A&R, I come in and he says, "You got to hear something." I said, "What?" And he puts it's Second Chapter of Acts. He says, "Listen to these people." And I'm going, they're having an impact. This guy's going, "Listen to these people." He was just blown away. Yeah. So.
Like all of us were.
Yeah.
So, did you pull together your buddies, your session players, to help pull it off?
He had David. That's when I first met him, and he had his road players and stuff like that. So I kind of melded in with these guys. So it was basically their band, and it was really good.
Was it one of the early things you did out there, Michael?
Kind of, yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah, it was pretty early
on.
I mean, I would say that the first 3 years or 4 years were typically the way it goes, where you're just trying to
You're just trying to get a living going.
trying to find a way to get a living going. I owed a guy who had lent me some money for a while, and I was able to pay him back and stuff. But it was like slim pickings, and but I never, at the same time, I never said, "Well, what am I doing here?"
So second chapter was probably 72. You think?
I was actually probably 71.
71.
Yeah. And then I met Kenny Loggins and Jimmy Messina at the same time. And Kenny and Jimmy were putting together a band. And they said, we're looking for a keyboard player. And I said, well,
I play keyboards.
I mean, so I kind of got involved with that for about 9 or 10 months, rehearsing for their first record sitting in. And that was kind of tough because they were auditioning other players, and so I was the one constant that had to sit there through all the auditions, and it took 9 months to
Can you play what you call it again, Michael? I guess so,
I mean, you were just, it was like, oh, please. But anyway, that was pretty cool because it set something in motion. It was something to do, along with some of these other little projects. And then a fellow by the name of Jerry McLean, he and his wife had a little group, and they got signed to CBS. And I had met Jerry and Suzanne. We're still buddies to this day. And Jerry, they were being produced by the guy who produced The Fifth Dimension. And Jerry said that he liked the song that I had written with them.
Which was?
I can't remember what it was. I really can't remember.
Typical writer.
All I know is that they said, because he wrote, I'd like to have him play on the session. The guy said, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, I'm not going to have Joe Osborne, Hal Blaine, and these people are on that session. I'm not going to risk it for the. And Jerry said, we don't have a deal unless you do it. And I didn't know that he
had said that.
No, I didn't know. So I showed up at CBS on Sunset. Back then they had 2 studios, Sunset and Vine. And I remember I was so sick to my stomach the night before because I knew who these people were. And so I sat down and I started playing. I thought I stunk. And Joe Osborne and Hal Blaine came up and said, I want your phone number. I said, okay. And Joe took me after the session to the union to get me to join.
Signed up.
And I was booked solid the very next week. The very next week, boom. And I thought I was terrible. I just was so shaky. So it flowed out of that because at that point it had some shape to it. I didn't know what it was going to be, but now there was shape. And it was a transition from session player, arranger, then producer, and then composing for film and all that kind of stuff. So there was a order that I would have not known what it would have been unless it started kind of that way.
Did you meet Chris Cross before you worked with Peter Cetera and the film stuff? No? When did you meet Chris?
79.
Okay, so colossal album. How many sales? 5 million? 6 million?
It's about 20 million now.
20 million.
By now, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's pretty funny because
3 or 4 Grammys. How many Grammys?
5.
5 Grammys.
But
unbelievable.
I'll never forget because I was a staff producer at Warner Brothers. There were 12 of us. You had Teddy Templeman who did, Van Halen and the Doobie Brothers. You had Gary Katz who did the Steely Dan stuff. You had all these, Lenny Waronker, all these people. They were like mega. And I'm this funky little guy sitting there amongst these guys. And Christopher kept sending, this is the first time I heard him, but he'd been sending cassettes for 3 years. And every Wednesday we'd have our A&R session listening to whatever's coming in. And I remember Lenny saying, we got another Christopher Cross cassette.
Where's Chris living?
He was living in Austin, Texas.
Right. Texas boy.
And so he puts on the cassette. It was the first time I heard Sailing. And when I got to that song, I went, and I'm looking around at everybody. I said, guys, am I the only one that thinks this is really good? And Lenny says, man, we've been getting tapes from this guy for so long. He says, do you like it? I said, I love it. He says, well, you do it. Well, that was the atmosphere. If you liked something, you did it.
You do
it. It wasn't the focus groups. It was none of that. It's if you like it, you do it. But I'll never forget, Chris had it in his mind that he was going to be produced at Warner Brothers by Lenny or Teddy Templeman or Russ Titleman.
Not Omar.
Not whoever this guy is. So he comes to Warner's. I have my office there. And he walks in, hey, I love it, and I'm not getting any vibe from this guy. It's like real cold. I'm going, what's going on here? Anyway, we had a half-hour meeting. He leaves, and I went to Lenny. I said, what's the deal? I said, I thought that, and it was really funny because we all went to lunch. I came back, and Chris explodes into my office. He says, you're my producer. I said, what? He said, I just found out you did all my favorite stuff with Steely Dan. He said, that's all it took.
Yeah.
That's all it took. So that's how that kind of came about.
You know what? I saw him perform not too long after the album came out, and all the Grammys and all the sales were taken off out through the roof. And I saw him in Norman, Oklahoma. And he came out, and he looked like a fraternity brother.
Was he wearing his Earl Campbell
boots and
jersey?
Jeans and his corduroy jacket and his button down.
Yeah.
And he just looked like every fraternity brother you'd ever seen, on college campus. And I just thought, that's perfect. Chris would stand there too, and he would play and sing with that beautiful voice, and then he would step on his lead sound, and he would step over and do a little lead, and then he would step back and get rid of his lead sound and go back to his rhythm sound. It was just, it was killer. And I can't even tell you how much it affected me. I mean, so Mike, it's been mountain type things for me that you were involved with along the way. Karate Kid. What year would that have been when you Satira?
84.
84, Glory of Love.
Yeah, 84,
right?
something like that. Yeah.
Huge song.
And then Donna Summer was 83 with She Works Hard for the Money.
She works hard for the money.
She's the greatest. It was so sad when she died.
Yeah, I used to see her at the Y, and I really loved that woman.
Sad.
She
We
was
were
a
such
sweetie.
good friends.
The Glory of Love that was the #1 tune. What else came out of that? BMI Award, TV Award, Grammy nom, Golden Globe, Oscar nomination. That was Karate Kid.
And
Arthur.
That won an Oscar.
Arthur.
That won an Oscar.
Yeah, that won an Oscar. So you've got an Oscar.
I don't. Chris has one.
Chris has it.
I don't have
Does
it.
he loan it to you?
No. I don't care about that.
Best original song at the Golden Globes that year too. But I mean, such an unbelievably colorful career as a sideman, as a session player, as an arranger. Do you get to do tons of composition for film? I mean, do you still do
The last few years, I've got a few clients that they come to me for.
You did the Holocaust Museum, am I right?
World War I Museum.
World War I Museum.
Yeah, the music for the immersion film.
Yeah.
Or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Golly, I mean, it's the kind of career that nobody can quite figure out. With Amy on 6 tracks on Heart in Motion.
Yeah.
Her biggest selling record.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
Baby is on. 4 tracks, including Big Yellow Taxi on House of Love for Amy. So, you know, when I look at all this stuff and the way the Lord has blessed you and used you, it's unbelievable to me. I mean, it's really a kind of a fabled story.
Well.
To look at and realize that you just kind of started off saying, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do. I'm just going to stumble along and see what comes out of it. I want to talk about, you moved to Nashville when?
1993.
And because?
I had been coming back and forth with my engineer to work with Amy and different people that were here. Things were becoming they were becoming decentralized. It didn't matter anymore where people were. You know, you'd fly somewhere, you'd go to Austin to work with Solon. It was becoming decentralized. So Terry and I were coming here, my engineer, for 3 or 4 years before that, maybe 4 or 5 weeks a year. And I just enjoyed
Being here.
the people. And I enjoyed the environment. The environment in LA was changing. The rap thing was becoming big.
Yeah.
Studio work was becoming less. And I found myself sitting in front of a computer designing music with a computer.
Yeah. Who wants to go here?
And the session thing was starting to diminish, and yet it was still vibrant here in Nashville at the time. Little did we know that it was all going to kind of go the same way. But but Stormy was the one I had to convince, because Stormy, we loved our church on the way and stuff, and because she hadn't come here, I'm having this experience and she isn't. So in 1992, when Bill Clinton won his election, George Herbert Walker Bush wanted Amy to come to Camp David to perform for his governors as a going away gift. Thank you for standing with me at Camp David. So it was November of 92. And Amy called, said, Omar, he said, get Stormy on a plane. We're going to go to Camp David. You can play for me. Gary was playing guitar. I said, are you kidding me? I said, we'll be there. So we get to Camp David, of course. It's a surreal experience. I mean, the whole thing's surreal. I mean, we're sitting there going, of all the experience I've ever had, this is like, what? So the Navy picks you up. They put you on a golf cart. We're in a room where Gorbachev stayed just a couple days before us. And I see the book, and I'm going, and the guy says, hey, the Navy guy says, freshen up. We're going to take you down to dinner. I didn't know what that meant. So we freshen up, and a few minutes later they pick us up, and we go to this beautiful cabin, and Barbara Bush comes out, Michael, Stormy, and I'm thinking, CIA, FBI, they know everything about us. What's going on here? And we go in, and it's he and his wife, and Gary, Amy, and Stormy and I for the whole evening. We're watching movies. He's serving us hors d'oeuvres. So it was like this bizarre. Anyway, cut to the chase. So we come back, spent a night with Amy and Gary before we came back to L.A. And Stormy usually gets a headache from plane flights. She gets the sinuses and stuff. Yeah. So she was upstairs at Amy and Gary's place and taking a nap, and she came down. She says, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. So she says, God told me we're supposed to move here. So I went, oh, yes. Great.
Here or here?
Nashville, yeah.
Here, Nashville.
Yeah. So I came back. I had another project to do. It was December. I forgot what it was. And she says, look for a house while you're here. And I was going back and forth with her, and we found a house. And we were back in June of '93 and moved in.
I was watching you from afar, and it kind of, I was like, all right, Omartian is in Nashville now. That's cool.
Yeah, well.
But you've enjoyed it. It's been good. You got to do a whole lot more Christian music. So you've produced all kinds of people there as well. Russ Taff and the Imperials and Catherine Tricoli and golly, I mean, it came.
A lot of stuff.
And a lot of country stuff as well that probably wasn't as open before to you, was it? I want to talk about process just a little bit. I mean, we've talked about all the mechanics of getting around the country and learning your craft, but in your writing process, does Stormy write? I mean, she's an author and a speaker. Does she write a lot of lyric with you?
Yeah. Well, when we did that musical Child of the Promise,
right,
I wouldn't touch anything until she wrote a complete lyric.
So the lyric was done and you wrote it?
And that was kind of unusual, because a lot of times I would, like when I did my own solo stuff.
Well, like White Horse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both. It was a combination.
It's a combination.
She would get an idea, or else I would be, it was funny because I can't tell you how many times we'd be in opposite ends of the house and I'd be banging out something on the electric piano, See This House or something like that. I was working on that. Mm-hmm. And she comes in and she says, well, what do you think about this lyric? See this house I built. And I went, see this house? It was right there. I went, what? I was working on the same thing, but I didn't know it, So it would be, how writing music can be an experience that's beyond just mechanical.
Yeah, you can't really.
There's an inspiration factor, so I'm always open to something weird happening.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of your lyric is generated. I mean, by Stormy.
Oh, absolutely. I can't write lyrics.
You can't, so you don't try.
No, can't you tell by just the way I talk?
Your music ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, are they explosive? Do they simmer? Are they both? I mean, do you get a bolt just sitting there watching an NFL game and you get up and go run into the pen?
Sometimes. But I think that with
do you like to have a lyric in front of you? Is that how you like to really?
It doesn't matter. It's one way or the other. I mean, I'm now at a place where I'm doing mostly instrumental music because it's film. So the idea of working with a lyricist is something that's happened in the past. It's not happening like it was.
Yeah.
Because I'm just doing instrumental stuff.
Right.
But it you would always find, like, there were certain lyricists, as you would know, that or whatever, certain writers that it was very comfortable to write with, and certain people you'd go, this is really hard. We're not, we're not, there isn't a flow here, and you both feel it, and you go, well, we're trying to jam a square peg in a round hole, and it ain't working. And so you go to the places where you find someone that it's just
comfy.
It's easy to.
You need that comfort level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and if you don't have it the first time, you find a nice way to say no the second time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's pretty self-evident to both. I mean, you kind of go, this
but
is.
sometimes they don't, and you do have to find a way to say no. I've got a little book called Songplanet.
Yes.
And I talk about the fact that don't ever leave. If it's the first time you're writing with somebody, don't leave the room until the splits are nailed down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you'll know, and it's okay to say I don't. Find a nice way to say no the next time, because you'll know, won't you, Mark?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this too, because this seems to come up more than ever. It does to me anyway. How important to you is? I know you helped shape a master's degree for Belmont College. You helped them their first one in a master's in music biz and what performance
music biz.
Music biz. So. What do you feel about, I mean, your kid comes along or your grandkid comes along and they want to be in the music thing and you go, ugh, it is really screwed up. The marketplace is really upside down from where it used to be. People didn't used to steal music, they do now. Intellectual property's in trouble these days. Single song downloads are worth what, 99 cents?
Nothing.
Really?
They're nothing.
Cost me $10,000 to make that song
That's
you
right.
got for 99 cents.
That's right.
So all of that is upside down. It's not like when you and I got, the Beatles, and we got all excited and just went, whoa, started in cover bands and started taking it wherever it took us, and then into the ministry, and all those things have changed.
There's no simple path. I mean, I think the environment's terrible as it is right now. I'm sorry, my daughters and my grandkids' ages aren't even listening to what's going on. They're listening to classic music. Because there isn't anything to glom onto today. 4 chords, some kind of.
When you say classic, you're not saying classical necessarily. You're just saying classic rock.
Either classical music or rock or whatever. I'm talking about
the real.
In other words, we've come from a very organic thing to a very mechanical thing, and I think that what's happened is that more people are jumping on board who are able to copy what already exists than be originators. And the trouble with that is that the airwaves are clogged with copiers.
Full of loops.
And it doesn't allow the originators to be heard because you have to wade through so much crap to get to something worthwhile.
Do you feel the same way? Well, yeah, I feel the same way you do about that. Because it's not as interesting. And that's why you still gravitate to 70s music. You find way more interesting because it's better writing.
The song My Girl, what was as important as that melody?
Yeah.
That was as important to the song as the lyric and the melody.
Absolutely.
Today it's just something awash with a couple 3 tracks of some sort of a drum loop and something going on and a vocal that's processed beyond process. So now what's left is who's the most outrageous, who's the most ridiculous, who's the most controversial, and we're not talking about the music. We've substituted terms like what a songwriter, what a singer, man, did you know what so and so just did? She put her meat suit on. And I think she's great, by the way. Gaga's great. But I'm saying you listen to the way people are talking, and they're not talking about the music. They're talking about the effects of absurdity,
which is sad.
Well, I mean, but the thing is that it was on its way that way through our entire thing. As we saw video come into being, technology came into being. It couldn't be anything other than the way it is.
It had to go where it went.
It had to go where it had to go. Christopher Cross lost all kinds of esteem as a result of MTV, because he wasn't handsome. So, I mean, it's just, You know what I'm saying? It's kind of gotten that way. So when you talk about higher education, I just
don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say. I was happy to be part of that, but I think about the money now involved in educating people who have no right to be doing it.
Don't need doing it.
My son is brilliant. My son Chris is brilliant. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant player. He can play anything. He can engineer. He got a degree in nutrition besides his music degree, and he can do computer programming, and he does everything because that's the only way he can make a living.
You got to do it all.
Yeah.
So get ready to do it all.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
And you better be good. You got to be good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I've noticed about your career, Michael. Well, the reason it's been so fantastic to me is that you started off early on learning your craft, and then you really sought the Lord and became a believer and started listening to His voice, and so He was able to bring things into your pathway, stick those things in your pocket. Michael, take a look. Steely Dan. Really? Cool. Lord, thank you. Thank you. And that's the way we're supposed to do it. And I guess you can't get fearful.
No.
You know, and tell your kids, no, don't do that. The industry's changed. You're going to get mashed. Because then you're just going to get in the way of what God may be doing.
Right.
So it's hard to let go of kids and let them go do what they're going to do. But then ultimately, I mean, you're in a place like that right now. and it's hard to do. It's like cutting off a limb.
Well, yeah, but you know, the thing is that I really believe there's seasons, and I'm 71 now, and I think that there's seasons where you're the warrior. There's seasons when you're the gray beard. So if you'll tap into how God views things, you will adapt to the seasons with grace. And so I don't wring my hands and go, oh my gosh, it's not like the old days. I don't even go there.
Good.
That's for somebody else. Somebody else comes behind and does the significance of that particular generation. I don't care. I don't feel I have to be relevant. I feel I have to be spiritually relevant, but musically relevant, it doesn't even dawn on me. I don't even think about it.
You do what you do.
And you know, the thing is that I think I learned very early on that if I'm really honest about that passage, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by me. If I really sit there and go, that's either a lie or that's either the truth. There's no in between. Then I have no choice to either reject it completely or accept it completely. Because it's a claim that would either make you completely nuts or you're who you are. And so I've always gone back to that when I talk to people and they're in this ambivalent, weird, funky space. I go, you know what? You're approaching this wrong. You're trying to make Jesus a good guy. No. If you take that passage, he's either off his bonkers, insane, or he is exactly who he says he is. And I always go back to that when I think about what causes me to press forward. It's because he was valid. He was who he said he was.
Real deal.
Real deal. And I feel like in our discourse today, where it's almost politically incorrect to be definitive about anything or have an opinion that might upset somebody's sensibility, I'm going, you know what? I got to be honest with you. You know, that was the way it was back then too. When he came out, man, people were outraged. That hurts me. I don't like what you just said. So I don't think anything's new. I just think we're in a season where people are, instead of being bold, they're being frightened. Yeah,
they're being carried into corners.
Yeah, and we don't have. Well, we do have. But I really pray for our young people to be bold, because the answer is still there today as it was 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
And because of that, you need to be assured that it doesn't matter whether I lose my best friend or whatever. They need this message so desperately.
Just get yourself to the place where you're willing and bold enough to lose a friend if it comes to that, because I did.
Well, people are losing friends over the way they vote. What is going on? I mean, it's like, this is like silly.
Snowflake.
It's a snowflake syndrome, and it's like what happens to a society. It happens to every society. it goes down the same path. When you decide, well, we don't need God, go over there, stand in the corner.
See how that works for
we
you.
we can do this on our own. And you watch, just wherever there's a lack of God, hatred just comes in and just
Here it comes.
takes over. And so I don't think you can know about life without Jesus, but beyond that, once you get that in, then you can apply what Jesus is to your career or your vocation or your ministry.
Good way to approach it.
But you can't know until you start with the fundamental.
Yeah. And make it a manifesto, a personal manifesto.
Absolutely.
To be bold.
Absolutely.
To be special.
Yeah.
To be unique.
You don't have to.
God make you a unique individual under His under His guidance, and not be afraid to. You know what? Jesus was the toughest preacher that ever came down the road.
Oh yeah.
He kicked booty, and he did it in love, but he did it.
Yeah.
Even if it hurt everybody's feelings, he did it, and that's what I want to see us get back to. The Jesus movement.
Yeah.
That the Jesus music characterized, and that I came up out of, and you did to a great degree, was bold. Church Gerard, Tommy Coons, all those boys in Love Song, and Larry.
And it had an impact.
It had an impact. They had an impact, and it was the last great move of God in our country. I want to see that happen again. And that's boldness. That's outreach. That's brotherhood.
Well, you know as well as I do that back in those days, record sales
didn't matter.
That didn't matter.
No.
That came as a result of doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it was not a prerogative. It was.
And then the slick record company applications to everything, and then then all these focus groups, and we need to make sure that
this industry.
Yeah, it became an
industry.
industry.
And then it became an industry.
And it's the way of the world.
Yeah.
It's the way of the world.
It is.
So.
Dude, I've had great admiration for everything you've been doing for years.
I appreciate it.
And the fact that the Lord used you in so many other dimensions besides just the Christian music realm. That He blessed your efforts in Donna Summer and Christopher Cross and Steely Dan and on and on. Yeah. You know, I didn't even ask you something I wanted to know about your demo process. Do you always just like cut a master? I mean, it's really never a demo?
You kind of go there.
Yeah, you do.
You kind of go there. Because it's kind of required. Yeah.
So are you using Spitfire or what?
I use Digital Performer. I still do to this day.
You do?
Oh, yeah. That's what I started in the 90s, and I just grew with it, and just starting with a new platform is too much to think of. We have Pro Tools. I'll transfer what I have back here.
But as far as orchestra samples?
Oh, no, I have LA scoring strings. I have a lot of East-West stuff. I've got, bits and pieces from all these different digital.
Do you have somebody come else play it?
You know Jonathan Willis? No, I play it.
You play it?
Yeah. Do you know Jonathan Willis?
I do.
Okay, Willis is because he's my tech that kind of loads everything up for me. No, I play everything. I play.
How fun!
Yeah. Well, that's because of the background that I've had with orchestration.
Yeah.
I understand the limitations of what a violin does and all that kind of stuff. So you're playing whatever instrument according to the way it should be played, even though it's not real. But that's not good enough. You have to put real. You gotta.
Yeah, you got to put the real add the passion to it.
But a lot of the scores that you're hearing today are a combination. You can't get those horn sounds. If you listen to the older stuff that was cut in Sony soundstage, that presence of the French horns and stuff, and bones and stuff, it's always a combination today. Because you can.
You try to do all D's and you're not going to get there.
Yeah, you can get the presence, you can do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So most of everything that comes along for you now, Michael, is not an artist.
No. That's my choice. I got to be honest with you.
You got to make the choice to go there
because I've just
There's
today
a lot more.
You're not getting a call from a record company.
Yeah.
You're getting a call from a parent or someone who represents a young artist, and nobody is older than 20 or 22. Because they've already figured out once I reach 25, I'm considered old in this business.
I know.
So I'm a 71-year-old man talking to a mom and dad of a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old. And they've got a certain amount of money, and I'm thinking, you know what, this is just a dead end, because you still have to take that and try to get that person
to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And the marketplace is still the tails in the seats, whether it's ears and eyes on YouTube or they actually play live or whatever. The bottom line is we're complaining about the fact that there's no royalties left.
But yet every artist is savvy enough to go, well, if I can just put all my stuff on YouTube, I'll get someone to listen to me. Well,
So they throw it on there free.
they throw everything out there free and then complain, why am I not getting
Why am I not getting any money?
It's the record companies they're to blame. For what they've done.
Well, they've
done this.
They're the dinosaur.
Yeah.
Just waiting to fall over and go
And I don't
extinct.
think that we have a new paradigm that satisfies the void of the way it should be. There's a void. And I know that everybody talks about, well, at some point there's going to be more royalties. How? Unless someone decides to be generous.
Yeah, unless Congress wakes up and really quits awarding
The film
Spotify
the film
and
industry has a real
Pandora.
handle on this. The music industry has no handle on this at all. And so it's really sad.
And now it's visiting film, and it's visiting book world, and anything that's digital property, or intellectual property, I should say, is going up on somebody's cloud somewhere.
But you know what's interesting?
Which means it's free.
Because record sales are going up because vinyl sales are up.
Weird, huh?
But the people that are buying
Totally
vinyl are
weird.
not buying today's artist vinyl. They're still buying the old stuff.
Kansas and whatever. I agree. That's totally whack.
I'm still part of ASCAP, and when I see a royalty from ASCAP, it far outweighs what I see from any other.
Well, look at this little song Stacey Rico did of mine that I wrote 100% of and published half of it, called Christmas Wish, and she cut it in like the late 90s, and she was huge. She looks like an anime art anyway. She's that little cute Stacey. She's huge in Japan.
Yeah.
But I get my statement in February that comes from my Christmas thing, and I go, 1.5 million streams in Japan alone on that song, and I got $111.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Somebody will explain this to me. It's like, that's the predicament that we've found ourselves in. So, Michael, if you're not in Christian music, if you're not a worship writer, worship leader, you have no way to introduce. The pop model is gone.
It's gone.
So you have no way to introduce a new piece of anything to the church unless you are a worship leader. And they're only replicating what they are singing on Sunday morning. And in fact, what they're singing on Sunday morning is the next act that they just. It's a vicious, weird.
Well, it's also
How are we
big,
gonna break out of this?
burgeoning,
How can it-
overhead-ridden buildings and people that are finding a way to keep their income at a certain level, so they'll go wherever it appears. So we'll change everything we did here because it seems like it's over there now, and so that there's no visionaries. I mean, I'm going out to LA in February to meet with someone at Warner Brothers about an artist that I produced a while back, and there's only one A&R person left. Period. One person.
It's the last DJ. The last A&R
There were
guy.
12 or 14 of us when I was there, and now there's one.
And you know what? A&R meant something too, because
doesn't
they
mean
were
A&R. The A&R is
legendary.
our
They were
job.
visionary guys. They knew when Bob Dylan walked through the door that he was Bob Dylan and not just Joe Schmo. And they had an ability to take, if he wasn't a writer, help him find the right songs. I meant to ask you before, how did you know when, and was it just gut when you would hear something and just go, oh my, that's undeniable. Whew, that's sweet.
I think it has to do with your own personal preferences, and to me,
As a writer, did you ever try to inject yourself into anybody's system, or did you just stay out of that?
I stayed out of it.
You stayed out of it.
And the thing is, to me, it's still Steve Berry, the guy that was the head of A&R at ABC, said you've got nothing if you don't have a song, and I still feel that way today. If you don't have a song, you don't have it. Doesn't matter how you dress it, how many ways that you.
And the great A&R guys knew. They knew when they had a song.
And so when I heard Sailing, I went, that's a song.
Yeah.
Or someone else hears something else that's a song. And that's it. It still has to do with a song.
Did you ever, like in the 9 to 5 era, did you ever have any songs that were plugged into the thing, as a part of a soundtrack album or anything like that? I mean, did you ever just get incidental cuts that came along?
Sure, you'd end up in a TV show or an end title or part of a compilation record.
But Hard for the Money, that was...
Oh, that was a Toyota commercial, an AT&T commercial, Del Monte commercial.
But you didn't write on it.
I did.
You did write on it.
That was good. That was really good. That was one of the early ones that just everybody. In fact,
So give me anatomy of that tune a little bit. I mean,
we
did you come up with the music first?
well, she wouldn't have any problems paying $2,500 for a studio just to come in and write. So we'd be set up at a studio, and she'd say, "Okay, let's do something." And I'd go, "Okay," and she'd start babbling or doing something, and then I'd start playing. But that one was right away. I just started this deep,
And she started singing
and then she went, da, da, da. She just started singing. And we went out to dinner that night, Melrose, I forgot the name of the restaurant. Stormy and Bruce, her husband. Mm-hmm. And she walked into the bathroom. It was kind of a ritzy place. And there was a lady who was the bathroom attendant, and there was a guy in the men's room. Her name was Onetta. And she came back, she said, "I think I got the lyric for this song." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, Onetta, she really works hard for the money."
Oh,
she walked in, she talked to her about her
What a
job
great
and
story.
stuff. And so that's kind of how she came up with the lyric. And I'll never forget, Les Garland, who was the president of MTV, literally came to the studio and listened to a rough mix of it. Shows you the difference in the way the business functioned. The president of MTV walked into the studio, sat down, said, "Get that finished and get me a video. I'm going on it right away." It doesn't happen that way. You know, Buck Herring broke Jet Plane, the Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
He said because they came into this radio station and played the thing, and he said, "Is this recorded?" I said, "Yeah." They handed him a recording. He says, "I'm going to break this," and he did.
John Denver tune, right? Or was it
I don't know
John Denver cover?
I don't know who's.
You don't know who wrote?
Well, Peter, Paul, and Mary had the big hit on it.
Yeah.
Leaving on a jet plane.
Right.
But that would have been the way. That was the excitement. See, to me, yeah, I'm very blessed with it. But the environment was also set up that if you were able to get into that environment, those kind
Anything
of
could
credits
happen.
could accrue because of what was going on.
Yeah.
You didn't have to wait 6 months to end up playing on a session.
Did we get bean counters all up in it and accountants? And is that what happened to the music business? I mean, or was it as simple as people started stealing music and
Yeah, but I also think that it's generational, and I also think it's what a generation expects from music. See, I come from
Nat King Cole.
music education in school.
Yeah.
It wasn't just football, baseball, and basketball. There was also music education. So you were sitting there, and they would play Beethoven.
But you also come from an era too, Michael. We both do, where you knew who Al Hirt was, and who Nat King Cole was, and who Chuck Berry was, and Buddy Holly, and it mattered.
And also, the only way that you could hear what they did was you had to hear a live person playing a live instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made a difference.
And not a loop.
No, it made a difference.
Yeah, it did make a difference.
I was on a plane.
We sound like the old guys. I know we do, and I don't care.
No, but
because we are boomers. But at the same time, I understand what it was that drew me to Paul and John in the 8th grade, and I derailed because the quality of what I was hearing and what the writing was like.
It was real.
And I cut my teeth on Buddy Holly lived across the alley from me in Lubbock.
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard
really,
yeah,
cool.
I heard Buddy Creed and rock and roll in this detached garage when I was growing
that's
up.
Cool.
That was cool.
That's cool.
But I had an appreciation for the Everly Brothers. I learned how to harmonize, listen to the Everlys, and I just think if it's ever going to get to a place where it really is fresh air to breathe and something really fresh going on, people have to get back to a place where they understand who the people that came before them were and why they were significant and how they created trends, and you're standing on their shoulders. I mean, I'm standing on Nat King Cole's shoulders, and so are you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So, anyway, buddy, I can't even tell you what a joy it's been to have you today,
man.
buddy. I mean,
Thank
just
you. I
killer.
appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, Michael Omartian.
You're the best. Thank you.
Songplanet
Thanks for
lives.
having me.
Hey, if you want to get some groovy music from the 80s, even the 70s, you need to go to farrellfarrell.com and check out the store.
because we've got some product that goes all the way back to our 8 albums and acoustic Christmas album that we've done since, and my solo album is there, and the pre-Farrell and Farrell Millennium album is there. Anyway, you need to get you some People in a Box or some Boundless Love. You need to go visit the store. So do that today.
People in a box.